Hello and welcome back. It's great to see everyone again, but of course I really can't see you, so that's a bit pointless, but thanks for watching anyway. In this video we're going to take a look at my KISS principle for organising and managing your Lightroom catalogue. Now, I've seen a lot of videos from various experts that describe really complicated ways of setting up and managing your catalogue, and quite frankly a lot of it is a waste of time, and you end up spending too much time fiddling around trying to set up a complicated system when you really should be spending the time editing and working on your images. So let's dive in and have a look at what I'm intending to show you. So let me say from the outset that one of the key advantages of using a program like Lightroom is that it's almost infinitely customizable to suit the way that you want to work. But this almost infinite customization can lead to overcomplication and confusion. So in working through this, let's go through the simple steps that I use to set up and work with my catalogue. Now, the first and most important thing is creating folders for each photo shoot or an outing, trip, or whatever it is that you're doing. And obviously the main thing you want to do is you need to have all of your image folders within the one master folder. That's critical for working with your backup system, so that you only need to point your backup software to the main folder that contains all of your subfolders. Now, I've seen some people that suggest, oh, you want to put all of your photo shoots into date order. Well, date order doesn't really mean a lot to me. I'm more interested in knowing what the event was or the location was. So for instance, we've been and shot images on Australia Day for many years. So I create a folder for each shoot, and in this case I put the year because that just differentiates the different times that we've shot the photographs. But creating a folder based on some of the metadata that's contained within your photo is a waste of time, because all of that's searchable anyway. You don't need to worry about setting up a folder that says March 2023, because you can find any image that was taken in March 2023 by just searching the metadata in your catalogue. So the first principle that I'm outlining is set up a folder structure that is simple and easy to follow and that has a meaning for you. You might quite happily work with dates, but I don't. I work with file names that mean something to me. For instance, I've done a trip to Canberra. I put that in a file called Canberra. Or I've done a number of trips to Tasmania. So I've got different trips to Tasmania, and in this instance I just put the date on the folder purely to differentiate the different times that I've been there. So principle one, a simple file structure that works for you and has a name that means something for you. And my second principle is that I don't use keywords. Now, that'll be controversial for a lot of people, because some people swear by keywords and others swear at them. And I've been using Lightroom since version 1, and I've got quite a large collection of photographs, and I've never used keywords, but my keyword system is the folder that I create with it. Now, I've created a folder for each photo shoot, and that's my keyword. I don't go down to the degree of saying, well, this was a photograph in the forest or by the beach or the river or whatever. They're all in the one folder, with the keyword effectively is the folder name. And we'll have a look at how we can search through those folders quite simply in just a minute. Now, the second thing I do once I've set up my file structure, I've been out on a photo shoot, I come back, I set up a new folder for the images I'm going to download, and I bring all of those in. Now, I never delete an image off the back of the camera until I've seen it on the screen. And what I do firstly, I've downloaded all of my photographs from a photo shoot or a day's shooting if I'm going to do multiple days of shooting, and I will quickly go through those images and give them one of either 3-star ratings, either 3, 4 or 5 stars. Anything that I don't think is worth pursuing or working on, I just leave and don't mark it. But images that I think are worth working on later on, I will give either a 3, 4 or 5-star rating. And you can see here's a photograph or a series of photographs taken in Tasmania. You'll see that I've given some 3, 4 or 5-star ratings, but I haven't deleted the other ones. I've deleted any real mishits or accidental photographs, and then I've gone through and I've quickly assigned 3, 4 or 5-star ratings so that I can come back later on when I'm preparing to work on these images and choose these ones that I initially thought were worth spending some time with. Now, I know some people have said to me, oh yes, but what if I change my mind later on? Well, yes, if you change your mind later on, for instance, this is one I've just picked at random. I thought this was probably worth pursuing. It's actually not a great photograph, so I've decided, no, I don't really want that anymore. So I just hit the 0 number on my keyboard, and it's now gone back to 0. Or if I gave one a 3-star rating and then I've decided, yes, this is a really great image, I can up it to 5. It's not difficult to change this, but at least by going through all of the images in the first instance and giving them a star rating of 3, 4 or 5, you've picked out the ones that you think are the ones that you're going to spend time on. Don't waste a lot of time on the images that are not great, but don't necessarily delete them, because you might come back later on and find some real gems amongst those later on. But this is a quick way to just pick out the best images ready for you to spend some time on later on. Now, my next principle is really based on the metadata that's stored with the photographs as you download them. As I mentioned, there's no point in putting images in a date folder because all of that information is searchable. So let's just have a look at an example. I've made a number of trips to Tasmania and I'm looking for a particular photograph that I took there. And as I mentioned, I've given all of my photographs that are worth processing either 3, 4 or 5 stars. And when I've finished processing them, I've saved them back into the same folder as a Photoshop or a TIFF file. So I'm looking for a photograph that I took in Tasmania. If I go to my folder structure, I've identified all of my locations in Tasmania. So if I click on the first folder, then control click to select the other folders, that means that I'm now looking at all of the photographs taken over different trips to Tasmania. There's another one. And now I can search through those based on the metadata stored within the image. Now, if we go up to our attributes, I can say, well, I know that I've given any photograph that's worth further study 3, 4 or 5 stars, so I'm going to look for any that have a rating greater than or equal to 3 stars. So I'm not going to look through every single photograph. I'm just going to select those that are 3, 4 or 5 stars. And then of course I can go and search my metadata. I've got dates, I've got the camera, I've got various things like the lenses, whether there were color labels attributed to it, what file type there was. Well, let's say I'm looking through all file types at this point, and we've got various other parts of the metadata that we can search. Now I've got here the ISO speed and shutter speed, but we've got all of this other information that we can use as criteria to search for. So this is a very powerful tool. Let's just say we're worried about the shutter speed. I know it was an image that was taken at a long shutter speed, so I can just choose all of those shutter speeds that say 1 second or greater. And here I've brought my series of photographs down from a great number, 5,747 photographs within these folders. I've now, by using these couple of criteria, I brought my search range down to 386 photographs. That's probably still too many, but at least I've identified a series of images from within that. Now, maybe these are ones that I've processed and called made into Photoshop files. So if I check either Photoshop or TIFF files, when I change one of these criteria, these will now change back to default settings, so it'll be all. So if I'm looking for anything taken in Tasmania, doesn't matter which camera, but whether it's been processed as a Photoshop or TIFF file, and I've decided I only want the ones that were taken on a longer shutter speed, I've now brought that down to 92 photographs. So then it's a simple matter of scrolling through these to find the one that I'm looking for. Ah, there it is. Very simple method, and of course you can add to this by using color labels and so forth. So my next principle is all of this information searchable. You just need to get familiar with using these search tools, because you can break down that great number of photographs into a much smaller search area that you can then scroll through and find the image very simply. Now my next principle is a way that when I've processed an image, I always save it back into the source folder. Now I know several people I know put all of their processed images into a separate folder system. I find that that's way too cumbersome, and if I want to go back and find the original file, I've then got to do another search. So when I've edited a file, I've saved it as either a Photoshop or a TIFF, and I save it back into the source folder. So for instance, if I've chosen this particular photograph and I want to find the raw file, well, it's sitting right next to the processed file, and that's a simple way of being able to find all of your processed images. Now the images that I've finally processed and saved out as Photoshop or TIFFs, and I think they're pretty good. You might disagree, but they're the ones that I like. I'll give them 5 stars, and I'll often give them a red label as well. And this assists then when I go and look at some of the collections and the way that I work with collections to identify these photographs. And you'll see sometimes here that I've created virtual copies of some of the files so that I'm doing other processing, testing and trying different ideas. They all end up in the same folder structure so that once I find the particular image I'm looking for, I can find other images taken at the same time, or the raw file that I'm going back. If I want to go back and rework from the original raw, it's all easily found. So my next principle is keep your processed images in the same folder as your source images. That way it's easy then to relocate and find them if you want to come back and look for other images of a similar nature. Now my next principle is all about using collections. And if you're not working with collections as part of your Lightroom Catalogue, you're missing out on one of the greatest features, in my opinion, of the whole Lightroom system. So we've previously looked and searched within particular folders for particular file types. Let's go back and choose all of our images right up here to our master folder, so that we're going to be looking at all of our images, and make sure that after you've done a search for a particular criteria, you then choose none. Otherwise you'll be then still filtering whatever you're looking at based on those criteria. So collections. Now collections come in a couple of different types. Firstly, there are collections called smart collections that are automatically created by Lightroom, and you'll see here that they automatically select anything that's got a red label on it will go into this collection. I've since added one that says anything colored purple. Automatically anything that is rated with 5 stars goes into this smart collection, and you can add smart collections to suit your own purposes. For instance, I've made one that's based on anything using flash in the photograph for particular purposes, and presentations that I've made about flash, and you can create your own smart collection. So let's go in here and set up a smart collection, because you don't have to do anything with this. Lightroom automatically creates this as you add photographs. So let's select a smart collection. We'll go up to the collections tab, click on the plus symbol, and you've got options here: create a normal collection, create a smart collection, or create a collection set. Now collection sets are like master folders that will contain various other collections. We'll have a look at those in a second. But a smart collection is one where you set the criteria and you can then adjust this to suit whatever you're looking for. Now I'm just going to call this one test, and by default it'll probably want to put it inside a collection set. We don't want that. And you can set up these various criteria. Now by default it'll come back with something basically like this, where you can say, well, I want to match all of the following rules, or you can say any of the following rules or none of the following rules. Well, let's say we want any photograph that meets any of these criteria. So let's say, all right, we want any photograph that's a red label as part of the criteria, yes, and then we'll add another criteria. Let's say that it is got a rating greater than or equal to 3 stars. We know that that's our system, where we assign anything that's worth editing 3, 4 or 5 stars. And then we can say, well, let's make another criteria, and let's choose Well, let's say we want the file type, and what we want to do is say, well, anything that's a file type that is, say, a Photoshop document, and let's add another criteria because I also have files that are in a TIFF format. So let's say file format is TIFF, and you can keep adding criteria as many as you want so that you can really create this smart collection based on any particular need you have. Now I can create that collection, and you'll see down here that there's a collection automatically made, and it's instantly generated a very large bunch of images that is all fitting within those criteria that I've created. So smart collections are really incredible because they automatically create for you. You don't have to do anything else. So that's not really much use to me, so I'm going to delete that smart collection. So we have smart collections, we have collection sets. Now, for instance, I made a book on Iceland, and so I made a collection set called Iceland Book Images, where I put particular images into that so that I could consider them and sort them down based on what I wanted for the book. So the actual collection set contains no images at all. It really then contains other collections within that. So when you set up a collection set, it's basically, it looks like a file drawer. That's what it really works like. It has nothing in it until you then put a collection into it. So for instance, I made a collection called buildings, so that I chose all of the buildings in Iceland that I thought might be worthy of going into the book. For instance, then I've got I've got one that's all the landscape images, another one that is maybe particular features such as the wrecked aircraft and birds and so on. And so what I did was I kept adding collections into that collection set that then I could then drill down and make the final selection. You'll see here that I've still got 201 images in the final selection, and then I would have had to drill down from that. And you'll see that there's a number of copies, virtual copies in here as well. I've experimented with different processing. I've made a cover page for the book and so forth. And so collections can be really worthwhile, and it doesn't matter. You can have as many images as you like in different collections. They can be in multiple collections. And the easy system is create a collection for a particular type of use that you have, a book, a presentation, maybe ones you're going to print and hang on the wall or whatever, and the collection is a great way of working with those. One important thing to remember with a collection is that if you have a photograph within a collection, it's not a duplicate. It is really just an external reference to that one photograph that exists in one location only in a particular folder. Let's say, for instance, this image of the DC3, it's in a collection based on Iceland, but I want to go and find where it exists in reality. If I right mouse click on that, I can go to the folder in the library, and it shows me exactly that image and all of the other images around that. So collections are a very useful way of working with groups of images that you want for a particular purpose. Now, my next principle basically follows on from working with collections, and that is we can put images into a collection. We can go back and find the source image in its original folder, and of course it works the other way as well. If you have a particular image in a source folder and you want to see if it's in any collections, you can go and check, and this particular image happens to be in a number of different collections. Now, it's still the one image, but it appears in a number of different collections. So working with folders and collections is a two-way street. It really means that you've got a lot of control over how you locate and find images to work with. Now, one of the most other important things is when you work from a collection, let's go and find that collection that we're in, Iceland book, let's say, for instance. Now, if I'm within a collection, I can then edit that photograph in Photoshop, and then if I save that photograph from Photoshop, it will reappear in the collection. But if you open that file from the source folder and save it out of Photoshop, it will appear back in the source folder, but not in the collection. Now this used to work really well until Adobe made a change to Photoshop a few versions ago and broke that connection, but they seem to have more or less rectified that now. And it's really important that if you're working in a collection, you want to edit the image, you might want to, for instance, go back, you put a raw file in there, you want to process that, save it as a Photoshop file. If you're in a collection, you open the raw file, edit it, and save it as a Photoshop or TIFF file. It should appear back in that collection, but only that collection. If it's in multiple collections, it will only reappear in that one collection. And of course, the original is saved within that original source folder. And it used to work really well. They mucked it up badly a few versions ago. It seems to work well now, but just be careful when you use that, because it doesn't seem to always work perfectly. But it is a really great way of working with your collections and original folders. Now, the other thing you will see here is that there's a number of different copies here. I sometimes work with a virtual copy of the file to experiment with some different processing. Now, the thing to be careful with is if you've saved an image out as a Photoshop file and then you start changing things in Lightroom with that file, you will get yourself tied in knots if you then try and open that file from within Lightroom, because you've got only a couple of options. So let's say this is my original image that I processed as a Photoshop. Here's a virtual copy that I've created to experiment with some slightly different processing. Now, if I want to then open that back into Photoshop to carry out some further editing, I've got a bit of a problem. So if I go to, say, edit in Photoshop 2024, which is the current version, I've got a couple of options. If I edit the original, I'm not editing any adjustments, I'm editing this file. If I edit a copy, I don't get those adjustments either. So my only option is if I've done some other processing on this Photoshop or TIFF file and I want to go back and re-edit it in Photoshop, my only option is to edit a copy with those Lightroom adjustments. Now, the only drawback is that if you do that, what you'll be opening is a file that has been flattened from the original Photoshop or TIFF file and the new editing applied to it. So it's going to severely limit your options if you wanted to go back and work through the various layers and adjustments that you've made to the original photograph. So just bear in mind that making adjustments to an image that's already been saved out as a Photoshop or TIFF file is going to cause you some headaches if you want to then go back and re-edit the original file. Now, just following on from creating collections, really simple way to create a collection is to, let's say you're working through from your master folder and choosing images for a particular collection. What we can do is we can just simply mark these as ones that we might include in a collection, and you'll see a little dot on the top corner of each of the thumbnails. If you click on that, that adds it to a quick collection. You can go through quite simply clicking on various images that you want to add to this quick collection, and they appear in the quick collection folder. Let's just grab a few more here, and we've started going through our images and we've added them to a quick collection. You can now go up to the top here to your catalog, look at the images in the quick collection, and if you decide, yes, I want to put all of those into a collection, you can just shift click and select all of those and then come down to your collections tab, which is way down here. Collections, click on the plus symbol, create a collection, and you'll see here that this will be, let's just call it test again, and you can say include the selected photos, and you've now created a collection based on those ones you've quickly selected out of your master collection. Now, that's pretty useless to me, so we'll just go back and delete that collection. And of course, by deleting a collection, you're not deleting photographs from your catalog. That's most important. All it does is delete them from the collection. You'll see they will remain in your catalog. Yes, I can delete that. And if I go back up to my quick collection that I created, they're still there. And I want to make a new quick collection, I can just clear that quick collection with a right mouse click, and I'm back to ready to create another collection. So collections are such a powerful tool. I'm surprised that more people don't use them as effectively as they should do. And finally, to finish off, just a few quick pointers on things that I think are important to, again, keep everything simple and not overcomplicate things. Let's just have a look at a few images in the library that we can talk about. Firstly, when I'm processing my images, I only ever process in a controlled environment using a calibrated monitor. I see a lot of people synchronizing files to a tablet device and sit in a coffee shop and process their files. The thing is that you don't know how accurate the color rendition is on the device, and also you're working in a very different lighting situation, which could mean that your processing is going to be vastly different. So point number one, always work with your calibrated monitor in a controlled environment. My second one is in relation to using the develop module. People on the internet will sell you their own various presets to get different looks to your image. I find that most of those are a waste of time. You're much better off creating your own presets and working with those to create your own look that is unique to you and not a copy of someone else's processing. And we'll cover making presets in another video sometime soon. And to speed things up in your processing, again, keeping it simple, when you have a lot of images that are very similar, you can process the one image and then use the copy and paste function to apply those same lots of processing to various images. Now, I've applied a little bit of rough processing to this one, not a great deal. I can then go into my copy option. I can then choose, let's say we choose none, and we'll just choose the basic options that we're going to maybe copy and paste into another image. Now, I wouldn't copy the cropping of an image because that's going to vary from image to image, but you can just choose what you want to copy. I will then choose the copy option, and then I can paste it into another image, and you'll see some of these are not great. It doesn't matter. I can just quickly apply some processing along the way. So that's my next option, or my quick tool. Use the copy and paste option. And also, following on from that, in a previous video I've covered the quick processing steps in Lightroom to get the basic look of your image right. You'll know that as you import an image from your camera and Lightroom shows you the image, it's a default view. It's not meant to be the final view. So using those quick processing steps, you can get to the look of the image close to what you want very simply and not wasting a lot of time on it. And finally, going back to your library with your catalogue, make sure that you synchronize your various folders from time to time to make sure that any images that you've been working on haven't been lost. For instance, if I go into library, synchronize folder, it can check to see if there are any missing photographs or any metadata that has been missed, and you can do that quite quickly. That's always worthwhile doing, and at the same time, always back up your catalogue frequently. Backing up the catalogue does not back up the image files. It backs up all of those processing steps and settings that you've applied to your images. And that's essentially the quick processing, keeping it simple, and I hope that's been of value to you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.